Burials is, as its very name implies, a funeral. I'm burying many things with this album. I guess you can call it a coming-of-age album, because I definitely feel older. Burials is mainly concerned with the death of my Siamese cat, MINA, in 2018, where many, many terrible things happened to me. I'm very grateful for Burials. I'm very grateful that this album exists, because it means I didn't succumb to 2018. It means I survived, because it was a year that I yet again tried to kill myself. Yes. So in this video, I am going to talk a little bit about the songs from Burials, and I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it. The first track is called Pallbearers. This piece was one of the first that I recorded for Burials. So after Mina died, I was plagued by these images of death and ritualistic death, interment and funerals. So I didn't really have many things to say at that point. I was reeling. And in times of great pain, I tend to sing. And I'm not a singer by any means. I don't even enjoy listening to my deep, dark, weird voice. But I sing, and I don't use language. I just articulate feelings with my voice, and what's happened with this particular piece. I have this image of like a procession of skeletons going downtown, carrying coffins and playing drums and hurdy-gurdys. A very colorful image, and I guess I tried to add some color to the sadness, because it was just a very, very heavy moment in my life. Departure tells exactly the day that Mina died. 2018 was a year that many things happened to me, and many bad things happened to me, and Mina kind of absorbed everything like a sponge, because that's what pets do, that's what cats do. And she began to feel sick, and she stopped eating and developed some liver conditions. It was almost like a feline suicide. She was fasting and trying to show me what happens when you have to see someone you love die. It was really, really weird. And I remember I left her with my mother, because my mother's house was a better environment for her. And at one point my mom called me and said, Mina is throwing up water. And so I thought, well, I cannot prolong her suffering anymore. So I went there and I spent a whole weekend with her. And then on the Sunday morning I called the vet, and he came to perform a home euthanasia. So I cradled her in my arms. She was very weak, very in like this sleepy state, in great pain. He administered her the 3 shots, first one to relax her, and then the second one to make her sleep, and then the third one to stop her heart. And I remember she swallowed twice, and then her head felt very heavy on my arm, and she was gone. And she was gone. There was only my mother and a friend with me, and I made a wake for her. Yes, and I stayed with her for as long as my pain would permit. And then by the end of the day we drove to the vet's farm, and a special little grave was dug up for her, and I placed her down, and I have no idea where where this farm is, I can't visit her grave anymore. So somewhere in the outskirts of town lies the bones of my best friend. And it was a very, very hard day for me. Very hard day, and it was funny because it was raining the whole day. It was September, and it seemed like the world stopped, and the world was filled with pain all around me. Weird stuff was happening to friends. And then in the same evening, the National Museum here in Brazil was set ablaze. So, yes, not a very good day at all. I quickly realized that Mina's grave would demand more things to be buried in. 2018 was really an awful year, and I can't stress this enough. And I was conflicted with many things from my past while I was watching my cat die. And one of the things that kept coming into my mind was the fact that I always wanted to be a mother for some reason. I always wanted to have a child. And I do understand that motherhood comes in many ways. But as a trans woman and a sterile woman, I cannot conceive. So I took the opportunity that burials gave me to bury things that no longer made sense to me, like pain and the pain of Mina's death and so on. And this specific want to be a mother, to be a parent, was something that I could no longer carry because it was so confusing, so painful, so strange, that I decided to just put it in the ground as well. So I would be free from this desire to pass on my genes, which I think it's a very irresponsible thing to do in the current condition that the world is in right now. Pando means ice spread. Pando is one of the oldest living creatures in the world. It lives in Utah, in the United States of America. And it's an aspen tree. Well, more like an aspen forest, really, because it stretches for about 106 acres, I suppose. It's a system of roots that connects all the trees of this forest. They are all clones of each other. And Pando is over 80,000 years old. So I use Pando as a metaphor for suicide, because that was yet another thing that I wanted to bury with this album, the old ghost of suicide. I had to do it for Mina. I had to stay alive. I had to keep going for her, really. And I use this image of a tree growing and pushing up twigs and trunks, like this everlasting process of growing and expanding and stretching, which is something that's very painful to do at times. To grow is something very painful. And Pando is dying. Pando is actually dying because of us. Interference, habitat loss. Pando hasn't bloomed in decades. We're killing the oldest thing in the earth. We're doing it. So it's a reflection on self-destruction, really. I wanted to include a very specific perspective on burials regarding trans loneliness, what it means to be a trans woman in a world of cisgender straight men and how they see us, at least for my case. Well, in 2018, my boyfriend left me, and I kind of started to date around him. And here's an interesting fact. Brazil is simultaneously the country with the highest murder rate of trans women in the world and the highest porn search rate for trans women content. Brazilian men hate us in the same proportion that they are obsessed with us. We're not expected to live past 35 years old here due to violence and disease. So Hacks is a sort of a reflection on these issues of violence and how we are being seen by these men. So with Hacks I wanted to bury this need for validation of men, this need to be wanted by these little coward, aggressive, pathetic men. MYGALE is a French word for tarantula, like an old word for tarantula. But this piece, it's sort of a sister piece to Hacks, but it's not really concerned with violence and sex. It's more concerned with love. What it means to be loved as a trans woman, what it means to love a trans woman in a society that tells you you shouldn't love a trans woman. So I use the image of tarantulas because they're creatures that are feared for the wrong reasons, like trans women. And also the image of a ballet dancer, which is something that I love. And this the situation in which I would break my own leg to show you that I'm not dangerous and you shouldn't be scared of me. And I would break my own leg to show you that, even if that means that I would never dance again. I wanted to bury that as well, this watering down of my personality to cater to some man's needs. MINA was the first track, the first song that I wrote and recorded for burials. I used to hum the first verse for MINA when she was sick, and I told her that I would finish the song after she died. So in a sense I didn't want to create the song. I can hardly play it without breaking down. The most enlightened creatures are the most humble, I came to realize with the death of MINA. And then I thought, well, here we are in a society that tells me that I cannot grieve for my pet because there's shame on it. It's a shameful thing to do. I can't skip work, I can't skip classes, I can't, call in and say, oh, I can't attend to my meetings because my cat died. You're not expected to do that. And when I created the song and later this album, I wanted to show people that it's okay to grieve your pet, your animal. It's safe to do it. You can cry, it feels painful, as it should. There's no shame in it. We live with these animals like they're part of our families, and we like them more than we like most people that are around us in our daily lives. So it shouldn't be shameful. Cry for them, celebrate them, as I did with MINA in this song. It's the least we can do. It's the least I could do for MINA. I buried her, I lowered her into the ground like a bag of sugar, the sweetest of all things, and brought sweetness to a grave. In Zoroastrian culture and religion, a dharma is this circular tower built for excarnation. So in their culture, they deem the dead body as something dirty. So they cannot bury it in the ground because it would corrupt the soil, and they cannot cremate it because it would corrupt the fire. So the elements are sacred. So they created these open towers, circular towers at the top of hills with 3 tiers, and they would place dead bodies in these tiers to be eaten by vultures. I think that's fascinating. It's my dream burial, really. I would very much like to feed the earth with my body after I've fed from her for so long. I think that's beautiful. I think that decomposition and being eaten by animals, we should not be afraid of these things. I think we have a very clean version of death, and we're very separated from death, and I don't agree with that. So I was musing all these ritualistic deaths, and I had this hurdy-gurdy solo in my head, derived a bit from Baroque pieces written for the hurdy-gurdy. So I kind of just sat down and pieced these parts together into this last piece of the album, and it's not so much a burial, more like a celebration, really. Like a celebration of everything that happened in this album, and coming to terms with death and accepting death. Something to lay down and to be pecked by vultures. So this is Burials. I hope you enjoy the album. Thanks for listening.